The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewell. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle, where you can access your full potential right now. Finally break free from destructive habits. That dream life, if you want it, you can have it. This is where you transform your health, mind, business, and relationships. Or do nothing and keep your life the way it is. But if you're ready for change, you're in the right place. This is where you're gonna learn how to live a habit-based lifestyle. You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewell. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ewell, and today we're going to be talking about learning to tune the voice of reason out. Now, if you've heard my 275th episode, you'll know that this was one of the lessons that I had taken away from 2 years of doing podcasts. And the important thing to consider inside of this is that we have these two competing voices that are constantly trying to get our attention, constantly trying to get us to notice something. And many of the questions I get sometimes are like, how do you know which voice to tune into? How do you know which one to really listen to it? And so today, what I really want to go through is not necessarily, having a resilience to either one. It's more of like learning how to clear up what are the clear distinctions between the two voices that we have that are constantly competing, and whether you want to name them something or not. What I'm going to do is just talk specifically about the ones that I feel like I've experienced, and just have an understanding of which one to tune out and which one to really tune into, because I really believe that these are distinct voices that are competing for our attention at all times. So, there's this idea of, the voice of reason or the voice of wisdom. Let's just call them this. But like, what I really want to ask you is like, what voice have you been tuning into or listening to? Is it the voice of reason? The one that tells us, what we shouldn't do, the voice that tells us, what we can't do. And it always has something to do with growing, but like more or less suppressing what we're actually doing. And what does that mean? That means that literally this voice is going to downplay everything that we do. Many of the times where I would see this voice come up would be anytime that I set a goal, made a plan, or some type of move that I wanted to change. This voice would literally creep in the minute I set a goal or had a new direction of where I was going. It was the voice that always came in to kind of seek comfort. And, one way I'll use it as, kind of like towards the podcast, where when I first launched it, I'm like, well, what business do I have really launching this? Who's going to listen? And really, I would have probably made it about 4 or 5 episodes if I would have if I would have listened to that voice versus the 275, which is what I'm at today. So this voice of reason, although it's not the classic definition of what you may find if you look it up, what I see is this voice of reason is, it goes against everything that we've set out to accomplish. So if I set out to change something in my physical body, it may be like, well, who cares if you want to lose weight? Who cares if you want to get in shape? Maybe you decide you want to do some challenge. It's like, well, that's stupid. Why would you want to do that? And so it always downplays the direction that we're moving into. And so the voice of reason gives us a reason why we shouldn't, versus the reason why, we should. And it'll constantly get us to try to play small in the situation. And it may sound sometimes like, well, hey, no one's going to know you didn't show up to the gym today. Go ahead and just sleep in. No one's going to know, you ate that cookie. No one's going to know that, you went home early. No one's going to know, this thing about you. And that's what the voice of reason does, is it seeks out comfort. It tells you don't have to do it. It often goes against the very thing that we want, that we've actually said we've wanted. And so one of the clear distinctions becomes, how do I know the voice of reason is giving me a reason or giving me an excuse? And usually that's what it does. It gives us a reason to not do something. It gives us an excuse to not do it. And it always seeks out this comfort. And the voice of reason always tends to creep in the minute that you will set a goal and something really matters to you. So if you want to make a change inside of your physical health, mental health, spiritual health, whatever that is, there's a voice that's going to creep in and keep you from growing. And that's where I really see, this voice of comfort. It's searching for the most comfortable decision that you could make, and one that takes very little effort. It's one that tells us, like, literally, we don't have to do this thing. But I really believe that we have to get attuned to this, because it's something that's going to creep in anytime we choose the path of growth. And so we want to make sure that we know that when this voice comes in, we're actually going in the right direction. This is actually heading down the right path of where we actually want to go. We just have to learn to tune it out to keep going. Now, there's this voice of wisdom, which actually tells us it's this voice that we don't actually want to listen to. It's the voice of wisdom that says the thing to us that we don't want to hear, but we actually know that we need to hear it. It often comes across as more like a whisper, kind of like, I always think of like, maybe it's this older, man of wisdom that's whispering me, hey, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, which is not always, it's typically, wisdom is not the easy decision. It's the most difficult decision. It often comes with discomfort, and it often comes in a form of a whisper. We often look at this as kind of like a nudge. It's like, knowing that we have to do something, but it's like voice of wisdom kind of pushes us off that cliff that we don't really want to take a step down. And it pushes us to that next place. And so, there's two very clear, distinct distinctions. One is going to search for comfort. It's going to tell us why we shouldn't do something. The other is like, listen, I know you don't want to do this. I know it's going to be painful, but you're going to have to do it anyways, especially if this is where you want to go. And I really love the voice of comfort, or that voice of reason, doesn't really come in a whisper. It's like, man, no one would really know what you're doing. It's almost like watching that cartoon where it's like, hey, no one's really watching. Who cares anyways? But I believe that's the time where we have to tune in to that whisper and say, yeah, you know what? No one is watching, but that's the whole purpose. Let's see how committed you are to this thing. And, I always look at this as like, okay, when the voice of reason creeps in, it's testing my resilience. It's testing my commitment. And I have to really learn to tune in to the other voice of wisdom in that place, because that's really what's going to guide me. Now, what I really call that voice of wisdom is really God. God is I got to tune into that, because the other one, the voice of reason, is going to be almost like a station trying to tune out that voice of wisdom. And so it's like almost like a disruption in the, what do you call those? Like an Amber Alert or something like that. It's almost like an Amber Alert for your voice. The voice of reason, the voice of reason is going to be an Amber Alert. It's going to try to distract us from where we're going, what we really want to do. And the voice of wisdom is often going to be, uncomfortable. The situation that you're going into, the discomfort that you have to go into in order to get to where you want to be, is never the easy path, but it's always the one that's necessary. And so as you guys are watching this or listening to this today, where in your life have you been tuning into the voice of reason? And where do you need to maybe tune into that voice of wisdom and begin, seeking out the uncomfortable voice that says, hey, I know this is not going to be easy, but this is really the path that you got to go on. Because a lot of times we want to avoid the necessary work that has to be done. But I would much rather do that now and be able to look back and be like, man, look what discipline I've built. Look what relationship I've built with this and developed with this voice of wisdom that continues to guide me in the direction I want to go. And it's also, helping lead me because ultimately I could look back and say, okay, 2 years ago, I launched a podcast. If I would have listened to this voice of reason, I would have made it to 5. I would have never made it to 275, which means a lot of the other things that came with that and the success that came with that, I would also have to go back on and say, well, listen, the reason why I was successful in these things is because of this reason. And so if you guys are listening to this, it's not just about the 275 podcasts I've done. It's more about I tuned out this voice of reason 275 times, and I built massive resistance and massive resilience to that, to where there's a clear distinction I'm developing between those two voices. And I'm learning how to tune into the voice of wisdom, which is actually going to lead me and guide me in the direction that I want to go. And so that's really what this is about. It's about developing the resilience and developing the discipline to listen to the correct voice so that you can begin to move forward in your life and you can begin to get the results that you ultimately want. Because we all know that voice of reason will creep in the minute we try to move forward in a different direction in our lives. So guys, I want to thank you for tuning in today. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me, Jesse, at habitbasedlifestyle.com. If you are not part of our private Facebook group, Habit-Based Lifestyle Business Secrets, we'd love to have you in the group. Just click on the link in the show notes, and that'll get you access to that. Outside of that, you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewing.